The Canberra bureaucracy is totally out of control and is in urgent need of some serious pruning. The public service is an absolute disgrace, and the first order for an incoming coalition government, which we will be getting after the next election, is to clean out the swamp and to punt every single public servant on a salary of over $400K. Every single one of them. Starting with this bloke, who is Secretary of the Department of Infrastructure, Transport, Regional Development, Communications and the Arts, heaven help us, who had the temerity to complain that we, the public, through our senators, actually want to know what they are doing with our money. My thanks to Liberal Senator Gerard Rennick, does a brilliant job for exposing this latest example of how completely out of touch and arrogant our public service has become. Have a listen. Not playing. No. It's much better when you hear it coming from him. However, basically what happened is Gerard Rennick asked him some 400 questions, which were put to this department, and the department complained that they didn't have time, or rather the Senate said, why haven't you answered the 400 questions we asked you? And he said, oh, we haven't had time. Gerard Rennick points out that they have 2,000 staff. Over 3 weeks, that's one question per 5 person, once over 3 weeks. You know, really, could they not have answered the question? To which the guy kind of says, oh, well, you know, we're all very busy. Have a look at this org chart of this department. Here you go. We'll put it up on the screen. There you go. So the bloke at the top is saying, you know, we're too busy. We can't answer the 400 questions in the time that you gave us. On that chart, you've got an entire net zero unit. You've got any number of people working on First Nations partnerships. You've got a people, culture and change unit. So Humphrey couldn't make this stuff up. You've got someone else entirely on First Nations languages and regional arts. Someone else on cultural policy, strategy and program support. There's someone else on collections and cultural heritage. On and on and on it goes. And then that's before you get to the other stuff. There's reducing surface transport emissions. And there's media reform, and on it goes. This is how your tax dollars are being spent. But no, they're too busy to answer the questions put to them by the Senate. Identity politics, woke garbage, in my opinion. While we can't afford to pay our electricity bills or fill up at the pump, they're complaining about, oh, it's too arduous for us to answer these questions. Now, kudos to Senator Rennick for thinking what I was thinking and asking the most pertinent question of all, which was,
Can I get on notice the salaries of the top 50 staff in your department, please, and the average salary across your entire staff? Thank you.
It's in the what?
On notice.
When was the last? Yeah, on notice. Yeah.
OK, so you're asking me to take that on notice. Noted.
So now you try running a small business or setting up a cafe or whatever, and you have to jump through far more hoops than you ever used to. This regulation, that regulation, often quite ridiculous rules and red tape, green tape, all that you want from authoritarian bodies like this mob, these 2,000 people setting these rules. People who never actually produce anything tangible, and who, as often as not, stand in the way of other people, other Australians, being profitable and productive. What a joke. But here's the clincher. Guess how much this particular character, the head honcho, actually earns? His name, by the way, is Jim Betts, and his department's website informs us that Jim strives to be a champion for inclusivity and social justice. But I think we may have guessed that, Jim, that rainbow-coloured lanyard. Nice touch, very, very subtle. Have a look.
They can read out the top salaries of the department. That'd be great.
Yeah. OK, so apart from the secretary, I'm happy to tell you what my salary is.
Actually, I am interested to know what your salary is.
OK, because it's in the public domain. I'll have to check exactly what it is because it's been adjusted recently. Secretaries are paid about, here we go, 900,000, 928,340 total remuneration package.
How much am I paid, Rita? Oh, thank you, Rita. 928,000. I forgot. Silly me. Close. Let's round it out to $1 million. Call it $1 million. Let that sink in. Now, my father was a senior public servant in Canberra in the 1970s, and he explained to me then that public servants always earn substantially less than they would in the private sector. He always said, if you want to make money, go into the private sector, because the public sector, what with all the perks and that, they never pay you as much. And they don't take the risks that we do in the private sector. Well, clearly not anymore. There you go, $1 million a year and a huge department of 2,000 people who struggle to answer 400 questions from the Senate. Now, on to a politician who this week actually said something meaningful and extremely important. And believe it or not, he's a mad greenie, coal-hating lefty, who also happens to be the Vice-Chancellor of Germany, Robert Habeck. Not normally my cup of tea, but he was spot on this week. Have a listen.
Die Gründung Israels war danach, nach dem Holocaust, das Schutzversprechen an die Jüdinnen und Juden, und Deutschland ist verpflichtet zu helfen, dass dieses Versprechen erfüllt werden kann. Das ist ein historisches Fundament dieser Republik.
No lack of moral clarity there, I'm pleased to say. Habeck is adamant that his nation's, that Germany's mission statement, that the entire basis of the Federal Republic of Germany is to ensure the safety of the Jewish people and to ensure that Jews never, ever again live in fear of being Jewish. Yet being afraid of being Jewish is precisely what is happening now on campuses, as we were saying, and in streets and on beaches around the Western world. In a moment, we'll chat to Dr. David Adler about what is happening here in Australia. Only a few people are brave enough to speak up, and good on them.
My Jewish sisters and brothers and I are on the receiving end of death threats from our peers. Undergraduates who have filed reports about these incidents have been left with no emotional support, no feedback, and no consequences for the perpetrators of these hateful actions. As a result of this inaction, there are Jewish students who do not feel physically safe on campus. And yet the unequivocal tone of the student body and, frankly, the administration prior to recent email statements is, no, this is not what anti-Semitism is. This is not what you are experiencing.
The Jews. Those words were said not here in Amsterdam, not on Broadway. Those words were said in Jerome Green Hall, Columbia's law school building. To be clear, I know this incident in fact occurred because it happened to me.
Now, should these students be scared? Yes, of course they should. What is going on around the world is utterly disgraceful. Let me be very clear, if you're struggling with your moral clarity. Israel removed itself from the Gaza Strip nearly 20 years ago in the name of giving up land for peace. That was the agreement. Land for peace. The people of the Gaza Strip then elected a terrorist organisation, and they've been stuck with them ever since. That terrorist organisation, Hamas, launched a brutal and bloodthirsty, barbaric pogrom against innocent Jewish families 4 weeks ago. The Israeli government must now eradicate Hamas. They have no choice. Evil must be wiped out. There is no other choice. That is moral clarity. The only reason you and I and our parents and grandparents didn't grow up under a Nazi or Japanese dictatorship is because the Allies approached defeating evil with the same moral clarity. But if you're struggling with your moral clarity and banging on about ceasefires and proportionality and all the rest of the lefty claptrap, then perhaps these comments from one of the heads of Hamas might give you pause for thought. October 7th, that's when Hamas raped, butchered and mutilated families, including putting a baby in an oven and raping its mother while the baby died. Well, this bloke, one of the leaders of Hamas, says that was not a one-off. Hamas intends for it to happen again and again and again.
النصية لازم نأدبها وحنأدبها مرة ثانية وثالثة، ومش هذا حتكون طوفان الأقصى أول مرة، لا حتكون ثانية وثالثة ورابعة، لأنه إحنا لدينا إصرار ولدينا قرار ولدينا إمكانيات.
And here is just a tiny bit of what he's boasting about. One more tale of horror from that day, October 7th. I'm sorry, it is distressing.
There was a little girl around 8 or 9 years old, and they cut her head here, over here.
cut it or they cut it off?
They just cut it all. No head. She was still breathing. She was just like shaking. And I performed a tourniquet, but it was her last breathing. Her last breathing. I wasn't there earlier to save her. She just lost so many blood for hours. All by herself. No one was near her even. She was so afraid. Her eyes. All by herself.
Should we take these murderous bastards seriously when they make their threats to obliterate Jews from the river to the sea? Damn right we should. Here's some crazed mullah declaring that defeating Israel is only the first step and that Spain is next.
بد أن نقول إن فلسطين من بحرها إلى نهرها أرض الإسلام وإن إسبانيا الأندلس أرض إسلام.
He then goes on, he wants the armies of Islam to seize back Andalusia and Spain and then move on and conquer Rome, and then when they've done that, conquer the rest of the world. No lack of what his religion perceives to be moral clarity is on his part. Now, that might sound like fantasy or hyperbole or whatever, until, of course, you see the footage that came out of London and other European cities during the week and last night. As one individual quipped on Twitter, we tend to think that Israel needs the help of Europe. Actually, it's more that Europe needs the help of Israel. What is clear, however, is that such vile aspirations, as expressed by so many, would mean for the women of the West. Those same women, in many instances, out there protesting against Israel and for Palestine. Don't say you weren't well warned. Yes, all those women back in the 50s and 60s, Rita's mum was one of them. Looking great back in the day, Rita, and then look what she would look like if she was there in Iran now. Meanwhile, over in Pakistan, the government there is expelling nearly 2 million Muslim refugees from Afghanistan by bulldozing them out of their homes. They have nowhere to go and they are terrified they will starve or freeze to death.
नाम को कोई नोटिस मिला है कुछ भी नहीं मिला है बैटरी आ गया कहते खाली करो तो हम सर अभी किधर जाए वो हम भी सर्दी है बर्फ हो रहा है बिल्कुल जाने का इम्कान ही नहीं है ना हमारा उधर ज़मीन है
सर तकलीफ बाजार था बताइए अब असरा लो अफगानिस्तान
से मगन जाइल रो न जाइदा रो रिचना लो फरान गरीबान खालिकी दिवशी वासम न लो لزان پرایرانی موږ پاس بچو خرو چې بچو کو بچان رو خلخانی لرو نه کوسته نه باسته نه مزدوري څوکسته ده
So where is the universal outrage as Pakistan expels 2 million people, pushes them out, bulldozes their homes? Not a whisper of protest from the universities, no marches on the Opera House, nothing. There's your moral confusion writ loud and clear. But that moral confusion is nothing compared to the moral depravity of the United Nations, who this week made Iran, one of the most murderous, tyrannical and evil nations on earth, the chair of the UN Human Rights Council Social Forum. Couldn't make this rubbish up. As I said last week, Australia and other Western nations must now quit the United Nations, stop all funding, withdraw immediately. It is untenable that we, you and me and our tax dollars are funding this thoroughly corrupt, perverse and sinister organisation. We must get out now. No ifs, no buts. At a time when the free world desperately, urgently needs to regain its sense of moral clarity, the UN foments the very opposite, moral depravity on steroids. Finally, here's a young man, Luau Ahmed, a Yemeni Arab, who, it strikes me, speaks with crystal clear moral clarity.
To those raising the Palestinian flag, where were you when ISIS was launched in the name of Islam and beheaded tens of thousands of Arabs in Libya, Syria, and Iraq? Why didn't you take it to the streets and raise their flags and condemn the terror and call for a ceasefire? Where were you when Arab dictators and terrorists killed hundreds of thousands of Arabs in Syria and Libya? Why didn't you take it to the streets then and raise the Syrian and Libyan flags and condemn the terror and call for a ceasefire? Where were you in the last decade when Saudi Arabia, backed by other Arab countries, killed and starved out more than 400,000 Yemenis, my country? I didn't see any of you take to the streets or raise the Yemeni flag or condemn the terror or call for a ceasefire. This calls for some self-reflection. When millions of Arabs are slaughtered by other Arabs, you say absolutely nothing. But when 7,000 Arabs are killed by Jews defending their right to exist, you revolt, you get angry, you raise the flag, you condemn the terror, you call for a ceasefire, you turn the world upside down. Why is that? Why were you so silent then, but so loud now? Can it be that you are finally raising a flag and creating chaos because you only hate that the perpetrators are Jews? Because you obviously don't care when millions of Arabs are killed by Arabs? Can it be that you storming the streets is just you venting out your hatred towards Jews? The same hatred that we learned by our mosques and schools? You often speak of numbers and proportionality, but by the rules of proportionality, you should not be raising the Palestinian flag unless there's another agenda at play. Jew hatred, or as I like to call it, hatred.
Moral clarity. I urge all Australians, whatever your politics, whatever your background, Australia is the most successful multiracial nation on earth, and it is our duty to make sure it stays that way. And that means that every Jewish child, every Jewish boy and girl, every Jewish family, every Jewish mum and dad and gran and grandpa feel safe and secure and free today of any threats, taunts or aggression in this their homeland. It is up to every one of us to make that a reality in every way we can. And it starts by refusing to have anything to do whatsoever with the current sinister and obnoxious anti-Semitic pro-Palestinian protests. If you know a Jewish person, give them a hug or a phone call today.